Good afternoon or good morning, depending on where you're tuning in from. My name is Zach Kunkel, and I'm going to be the moderator for today's webinar titled, What's New with TheWorxHub? This afternoon, we're going to be overviewing the latest updates and enhancements for TheWorxHub and talk about how they are defined to help you and your institution operate more efficiently. To run through a couple housekeeping items, just FYI, all lines are muted. If you do need to get in touch with us or ask us any questions, please do feel free to use the chat feature or the Q&A feature at the bottom, and we will get you taken care of. If you do have any technical difficulties, please feel free to use the chat function as well. And if something bad were to happen, if you do get muted or booted, if anything goes on with your network, you can sign on the same way. And if anything terrible happens and you're not able to log back on, a recording will be sent out to everyone following the end of the presentation in a couple business days. To talk about the end of the presentation, we will be reserving around 10 to 15 minutes of time at the end for Q&A. So please feel free to, during the presentation, to send your questions in via the Q&A function at the bottom of the screen. So now to talk about our presenters for the day. First, we have Kyle Adamo. He is the product manager for TheWorxHub, and he has been working with healthcare organizations for the past 20 years. He is based in Toronto, Canada, with his wife and 2 boys. And then next, we have Josh Malbagat, who is a healthcare sales leader for us at Dude Solutions. And he has been working with healthcare organizations for the past 18 years. He is also based in Toronto with his wife and 2 girls. So without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to our presenters. And take it away, guys.
Awesome. Thanks, Zach. So this is Kyle here, and our agenda today is super straightforward. We're going to take a look at what we did last year in the TheWorxHub, so what were the new updates, features, functions that we rolled out. Then we're going to switch into what we're working on now, so the stuff that's imminent in the next month or 3 months. But like Zach said, we want to leave some time at the end for Q&A, so do use the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen or wherever it might be to submit those questions, and we'll try and field them as we go. Before we jump into the meat of this, I want to take a step back and do a little bit about Dude Solutions and who we are. Josh, do you want to give us an overview?
Sure. So this is Josh. Happy to be here. So Dude Solutions overall has 12,000 customers using a variety of different CMMS or maintenance software platforms. On the healthcare side, we've specifically designed the TheWorxHub in the instance we're looking at for hospitals. We've been doing this for now more years than really care to count, 19 plus. We've grown astronomically over the last number of years, now up to about 650 employees, and that's set to grow even larger. 97% client satisfaction. Really, overall, our focus is about designing products that fit for the specific needs of the industry that we serve. So that's why we're really happy to be doing webinars like this, where we're showcasing the improvements we've made based on a lot of the feedback that you've given us. Kyle, I think we have some actual stats on the hospital side as well, right?
Yeah, so if we dive into just the TheWorxHub alone, our sliver of Dude Solutions, so we have about 1,500, just over 1,500 customers. In the last couple of years, we've grown about 219% in the hospital acute care medical clinic space. About 9 years we've been at it with this particular product. Josh and I go further back to other CMMS products, on-premise ones, before we made the TheWorxHub. So it's been around for a while, and over the last 12 months, we've done about 22 software updates. So this is part of what we do in our business is we're always enhancing. Usually every couple of weeks, we'll roll out a list of enhancements. So there's quite a few that have been updates that have been gone out. Many of you have seen. But this is just a recap because sometimes you have busy days, you don't get to read the release notes, so we'll summarize them for you. So we can jump into some of the updates that we've done. I've grouped them in various categories, but there's a series of updates that we did that don't fall into general into categories. They're sort of generic foundational updates that apply to the whole system.
And one thing I wanted to add as we start to look at these is for everyone to keep in mind that the updates that you're seeing here came directly from feedback that you yourselves have given us. And we really value and appreciate that input. So please don't hold back on support calls, training calls, and calls with any team member here, letting us know what things you'd like to see as the software evolves. We're really committed to this, and I hope as you see the growth that we've had just in the last year in these updates Kyle's sharing, you'll see evidence of that.
Yeah, internally, as you place feature requests and things like that, they go into what we call an idea portal here that gives everyone visibility on them. We can discuss them, vote on them, and that sort of stuff, and basically move them into what's called our backlog of things to do. So keep them coming. So let's jump into one called bulletins. I especially like this feature because it's so simple to get started with. It's a tool for intra-company communication. So a lot of people in your organization use the TheWorxHub, from your care workers, reception, management, techs, EVS, that sort of stuff. You can establish these bulletins or important notices, and they'll appear in the header of your software in this red button that appears. It also appears on mobile, which we'll see on the next screen, and people can read these bulletins. They can interact with them, like mark them as read so they don't bug them anymore. But it's a great way to open up another channel for you to communicate with them. So here's an example on mobile. So you'll see the little bell icon indicating there's two bulletins here. I've seen a various number of uses for these, from reminders of staff training, elevator outages, policy change notices, event announcements. It's pretty versatile.
Things like weather changes, all kinds of stuff. It's really amazing when people get their hands on it.
Yeah. So it's a great channel for that. Another thing that went out recently is some changes to how we do pick lists to make our pick lists a lot more searchable. As we've seen over the years, reporting requirements get more complex, thus do your data classification requirements. So some of our pick lists tend to get longer and longer as we uncover new reporting requirements that require more granularity on how we're categorizing data. As these lists get longer, it becomes more important to be able to search through them. So the way these pick lists work, you just start typing, it'll find whatever you're typing and highlight the items that match it. It's a very quick way to get through your pick lists, and we see a lot of interactions with pick lists, well over 200,000 interactions a day. So we've been rolling out this new pick list control throughout the software. I think we're at about 80% through the software. We're going to continue to add it as we get into the lesser used areas, but for the most part, we've hit the major forms that you guys are touching. One of our other goals, we made some changes to the header area of the TheWorxHub. This is in the desktop app. We've got a lot of help resources that just weren't getting the attention and eyeballs that we wanted them to get. So we've moved a bunch of things under your help menu. So you can get access to your live chat. Live chat opens up a direct communication with the support rep to get you instant support. Email support, if you don't feel like talking to somebody right now, you can fire off an email. Or you can click through and visit the help site. There's a lot of options in there, including one of the things we added recently was this free training, this free online training option.
Yeah, the online training has been really a great piece to put out there. We've had really high adoption of it. Essentially, think of that as your tool if you've got new staff starting. If you yourself want a refresher, you can actually sign up for 1-hour sessions with a live trainer where you'll get really great knowledge on how to make the use out of the system. We're also building out more intensive deep dive sessions where you're spending a half day with our folks, really getting the most out of software. And it's all online, so from the comfort of your desk.
Oh, I'm on. Another thing that is came from feature requests from customers is we commonly got something where throughout the TheWorxHub you can do email subscriptions. So you can subscribe people to work order updates or survey updates, things like that. There was often a feature request where people wanted to create email groups so that instead of picking 15 people to get the email subscription, they could pick one group and define this consistent group. Sometimes it was life safety groups. Sometimes it was devoted to a building, so all of the technicians in this building could get updated on this. So you can define your email groups. This image in the top right, it shows you the area in settings where you can define them. It's very simple. Name your group, add some people to it. And then down below in the bottom right here is anytime you are on a form, whatever form it might be that includes an email subscription picker, you can find individuals, or you can also find your groups here as well. So this is where you'll be able to pick your groups, and your colleagues will love you for it. They'll just be getting emails in their inbox. It'll be great. Staff reminders throughout when you're managing your various staff who have certifications and things like that, often those certifications need to be updated, or you need to track information on them. They might expire. Through your staff form in the WorxHub, when you open up a staff record, there's a panel called certifications. You can fill in some certifications there, put expiry dates, and any reminders about those staff will show up on your dashboard if there's something that needs to be renewed or expires. So you can see on the screenshot here, just an example of how it shows up on your dashboard and keep you on top of anything that you need to refresh or renew. Here's a more unfortunate feature, staff deactivation. We've always had the ability to deactivate staff. This happens quite frequently, unfortunately, to the tune of like 1,500 deactivations per month. So when staff are let go or they quit, you need to deactivate them in the system, which is a single click. It's always been a single click, but we've added a helper and some automation to this because your job's not over once you deactivate them. They could be linked to upcoming PMs. They could be linked to open work orders. So we can automate the process of removing them from those things. They will always remain on historical and completed work orders for record keeping and audit purposes and reporting. But moving forward, those jobs aren't going to get done if they're not there. So you got to remove them from your PMs and open work orders and assign someone else. So we're automating that whole part of removing them. So the bulk of our feature functions involve work orders and assets. So I've grouped a lot of our different updates into this banner. So we're going to sort of go rapid fire through these just to take a look at some of the changes that rolled out this year. One had to do with task lists. We always had task lists that were just check marks to say, yes, this was done. But we wanted to introduce a bunch of new task types. And these include mechanisms to collect readings, to require things like a barcode scan, pass-fail tasks. Pass-fail tasks are great because you can even hook up a corrective action template to it. So if you fail on this task, then trigger this template. Desktop and mobile they're available on, and there's some options to allow you to force these to be required to be completed before the entire work order can be completed. They're very versatile. There's a lot of different things that you can do with them, and they're logging absurd amount of detail as far as when stuff was checked, any readings, any entries that were entered, so you can report on all those things.
Yeah, and this piece, I can't kind of overemphasize the value that it has. And it does sometimes look a little bit complex when you're first setting it up because of the number of things that you can do because it is so advanced. But keep in mind that when you push this out to your maintenance folks on mobile, it's going to look really simple. They're just going to get a checklist of things. The work is on your end in the beginning to set up the checks and the balances that you want to have happen, put in all of the barcode scans, the readings, and once they're there, you do that once, save it, and then it's going to look beautiful out in the hands of the maintenance folks that are actually doing the work.
So these are, tasks are pretty widespread. We know we need to see more adoption, but as of right now, we have about 137 million task list items being tracked in the WorxHub. So there's quite a few, but not every work order has full coverage, of course. Let's take a look at another one that I'm a big fan of, and this is another area that we're continually investing in. Routing. This allows you to automate the assignment of work. You can define rules that will automatically assign work orders to staff, to contractors, or teams, which we'll talk about later. So you can route all your HVAC PM to an HVAC team. You can write various tasks to a manager perhaps, or anything in a particular building to a team over there or to an individual over there. So it gives you a lot of flexibility. And you can set up all these different routes and sequence them so that the software evaluates them in a particular order to make sure they go to the right people. This is best, I believe, when it's paired with teams. And teams are a way to group similarly skilled people together. So these could be building queues for a trade. So all of your HVAC techs might be in a team, or even zones. So people who work in a certain area and stick to that area, be it a building or a floor or a wing, you can set up a team around that and make sure stuff gets routed to them automatically. And essentially what a team is we will push all the members of that team will see those work orders under their Just My Work area of the dashboard. So they'll see stuff directly assigned to them, but also stuff assigned to their team. So once they get through their current assignments, they can look at the team's queue and say, okay, here's one. I'm in this area. Let me pick that one off the list. So they're essentially picking stuff out of the queue and assigning themselves. So it's a good and simple way to sort of disseminate work to the people who have the best likelihood to complete it in a timely fashion. We also rolled out sort of a version 1 of implementing some Joint Commission compliance standards into our system. So we've mapped various elements of performance to your asset categories and PM categories, so that as you're working through, if you created an asset or you're looking at a piece of equipment in the system, you'll see which EPs belong to it. You can click on them to get a preview of what that EP is. As you're creating PMs, you'll also see the same standards appear. As you start to categorize these, we'll say, okay, this is for fire extinguishers, so here's the EPs that apply. And then what this leads to is some reporting options that allow us to filter and sort on elements of performance. So if you want to get an output of your work history against fire extinguishers or ECO 20305, element of performance 15 or 16, you could do that and pull reports on what you've done in relation to those EPs, or look forward to what PMs you have set up related to those EPs, so you can see if you're in compliance. And that's, to go back to this, we'll see in some of our updates, this is a place where we're going to be implementing more functionality soon, and I'll talk about that later. Another feature that's pretty heavily used that we rolled out this year is just a really simple one to allow you to customize messaging at the top of your request form. People use this for all sorts of purposes. A very common one is to put in some language there to tell your requesters what to do in true emergencies where there's a fire, there's a flood, there's an injury. Sure, you want them to put in a request so you have that record and that tracking, but they should probably go to the phone first and do that part. So you can put in that information just to make sure that they're taking the right action there. So this is, anytime you want to add this, go to your settings, go to work orders, there's a section called request form message, and you can customize it there. Another workflow improvement we've added is inside your fixed asset form. So this is where you're looking at all your various pieces of equipment. You might create a piece of equipment in the system and you want a quick and easy way to create a PM associated with that. There's buttons at the bottom of the form to create a new scheduled work order or PM. So that's something that's a recurring task. Or if there's a corrective work that you need to add, you can click the new work order button. It'll create a corrective work order right from here. So it'll carry forward the asset information to those new work orders. It's just cuts out a few steps for you. In our capital planning app, this is an add-on app that allows you to do replacement forecasts of your equipment and assets. And there, with the capital planning app comes some functionality added to our batch asset update tools that we have. There's ways that you can batch edit assets. When you have the capital planning app, you can do a batch condition assessment. We've added a couple features to that to let you lock in inflation rates. So in a batch, you can update all your asset records to lock in inflation rates if you want to do a custom rate on things, and also to tell the system that when you're reporting on this, to cycle the asset replacement.
Yeah, that cycle asset replacement function is something that often gets forgotten, but it's really essential if you're looking at a long time horizon, 10, 15, 20 years out in terms of capital needs. What it does is basically show at multiple intervals whatever asset you need to replace on whatever cycle you set. So if something has an 8-year life, it'll show up every 8 years in the plan, often overlooked.
Sort of related to that is an asset retirement helper. Every time an asset is being replaced, you can retire it. And we take a few steps here where we can look at that retired asset and look to what it's linked to and help you through the process of removing those linkages. If there's PMs that are firing associated with that asset, you might want to remove it. Well, you definitely want to remove it from those PMs so they stop generating with that asset. There's a couple other areas such as templates and whatnot you might want to investigate as well, but we'll step you through it when you go to retire an asset and automate that whole process for you. PM frequency filter. This is just a filter on various reports that we've added it to. It's on an asset work history, PM analysis, and a PM monthly forecast. So this will let you customize your reports to filter on just records generated by specific frequencies. So if you wanted to look at your fire extinguisher inspections, but you just want to look at the monthly ones, you could apply a monthly PM frequency filter. It'll output all of the work that you've done against those fire extinguishers, but just the monthly ones. It won't include the annual ones. Okay, so that allows you to sort of drill into specifics around the frequency. Again, this will be used in a lot of your compliance reporting. You can build out your report. You can save it as a favorite. It'll land on your favorites dashboard, and you can run it in a single click from that point forward. So it's a powerful feature, and we're going to roll it out to a few more reports as we get going through those. Report column picker. This is on a few reports. Our reports are pretty much canned. So you get your reports in a certain format. You can filter them using all these different filter controls. You can determine groupings and sortings, turn off and on other options. But we started to add the ability to remove columns from that report update through this column picker. Sometimes less is more when it comes to reporting. Sometimes there are too many questions come out of showing too much data. So you can limit the data that's output just by selecting the columns that you want and essentially build a whole new report for yourself. If you find a common configuration you like by removing some of these columns, save it as a favorite so you don't have to remember that anymore. Then it'll just be a single click to run that report and it'll remember all your column settings. Or if you're subscribing to it, you can do that too and get it sent to your inbox. So we've done a few reports. I think 3 different reports have the column picker. We're sort of evaluating the rest of the reports and we'll incrementally add that functionality to other reports where it makes sense. Coming back to the task list functionality, we added all this different unique types of task lists and capabilities to allow people to capture inputs, whether it be, runtime, voltage, all that stuff you can capture on a task list now. And we can also report on it. This is an example of a pretty condensed task list results. So I can look at a particular PM that was generated and I could see the type of task it was, who did it. Eric Bacon did it at this time on this date. Any notes that he added. This was just checkbox one, so I can step through and see exactly what he did. Here's one where it was a meter reading and we had to capture oil pressure. I could see his 3 readings there. This was done by Billy Churchill. I can see other tasks that were incomplete. So if you ever need to dive into what happened on a scheduled work order and generate it in a report, you can do that with the task list results. And it has filters, like if you just want to look at all the tasks that were incomplete or they failed on a pass fail, you can do that too with this report. Task list export. This looks at all of your PMs that are set up in the system and allows you to export all the tasks associated with that. It's designed to allow you to review them. Tasks themselves have a lot of detail, so much so that it's hard to output just on a PDF and expect it to be readable or printable. If we export to Excel, it's a nice way. It can be ugly at times, but it's a nice way to allow you sort of a familiar environment to review these tasks. I've seen people create pivot tables to sort of analyze things to make sure they've got all the right stuff in there, but it's a quick and easy way for you to scan through your tasks that are out there to make sure you're in compliance. And I've seen people use it for a lot of different purposes.
Yeah, this is one that we really wanted to build out for you because of the frustration we've had pulling data from competitor systems. Most of the people that we've brought on come from another CMMS, and it is virtually impossible to pull out their PM plans. Systems make it so hard. You don't really control your data. We really wanted to take a different tack. So building reports and exports like this truly give you control over your data, which I think is really important.
Absolutely. So for the last number of slides, we've talked about some updates to work orders and assets. We talked about an add-on app called Capital Planning. There's a couple other add-on apps that I'm going to get into. One is inventory. Now there's a surveys and inspections app. Let's take a look at surveys and inspections. One of the feature requests we got a while back was the ability to automatically generate like satisfaction surveys to send those out to your requesters on some sort of random generation. So you can create rules now that will automatically send out a survey of your choice so you can create these surveys that are like rating scale surveys. You know, how easy was it to submit your request? Did we respond in a timely manner? On a scale of 1 to 5, rate us on these things. So you can set up all those surveys. You can define which roles you want that to go to. So you might just have one that goes to requesters. You might have a different type of survey that goes to managers who are submitting or executives who are submitting requests. So you can manage and control all these things. It's really easy to set up, and they'll just send out emails to people once those work orders are completed.
That's a fantastic piece for getting real-time feedback on how you're doing. We've automated it so that you don't have to do any work, but you'll actually be able to report on what is your satisfaction score daily, weekly, monthly, included in your departmental reports, things like that.
Our inventory app was another place that we gave some love to. The workflow that was in the system prior to the update that changed this was really clunky, was pretty ugly to be kind. It left a lot to be desired. We saw some problems where people would link inventory but never really assigned a quantity and never consumed it. So inventory was being linked but was never being depleted from their on-hand quantity just because of some workflow issues. There's too many clicks to get stuff in there. So we analyzed the data. We uncovered that the majority of inventory that was being assigned to a work order was in a quantity of 1. So if you assigned a belt, it was typically 1. If you assigned a light bulb, it was often 1. So now as soon as you assign an inventory item to a work order, or a PM for that matter, it will automatically assign a quantity of 1. If you want to consume that quantity, it's a single click. You just click consume 1. This is the same on desktop and mobile. If you need to assign more than 1, which you sometimes need to do, it's pretty easy to just edit the quantity assigned and say assign 4 or 10 or 12, whatever you need. Then as you're consuming them, you just click consume 1. It's a lot smoother, it's a lot less clicks, and a lot less, I guess, streamlined in that you won't get in a situation where you have to go through a lot of clicks in order to consume that inventory. So that was just sort of a taste of some of the stuff that we've launched. There's more than that, but these were the major highlights that we could pull together. And there's a lot of stuff that's in the pipes right now that is being worked on. And I wanted to go through some of those things to get a feel for what's coming out relatively soon. Work order costs and budget overhaul. We are tracking costs in the system now. There's a bunch of automated costing that happens based on labor time and pay rates. Inventory will automatically do costing. There's a really sort of obscure and hard to find way you could add additional costs on a work order. We wanted to improve that whole aspect and put more visibility into the costs that were being assigned to a work order. So we're adding a new cost panel to your work order where you'll see all the costs that have been accrued itemized. These could be staff labor costs. These could be ad hoc purchases that you make on the fly. Maybe you have to run out to buy something at Home Depot. You can capture that. It can be ad hoc services. So maybe you bought a service and you had a contractor fulfill that. You can track that as well. We've also enhanced, actually let me come back to this. One of the core things we're trying to solve is for every one of the costs on the work order, we want you to be able to attribute an account or budget code to it to roll these up later, which we'll look at in a second. So the idea of adding these sort of ad hoc costs, we've improved on that. It was really minimalist before what we could support. It was basically put in a name of the cost and a dollar value. You didn't have all this, I guess, metadata to let you see who added this cost, who was a purchaser, what date did it happen on, who did we buy it from. So all of this stuff you can track now, including linking stuff to a budget code and even uploading things, whether it be a PO, maybe it's a receipt for the purchase of something. You can upload files to associate with transaction costs as well. Because we're going to be linking these costs to account and budget codes, we now are implementing I'm in a settings area, work order settings, where you can see all my budgets. So I can see all my budget codes, and I can see the annual budget I've assigned to those items, and then I can see my year to date and what percentage of budget that I'm at. So am I running too high? Am I over budget? Am I encroaching on my budget value? There's all these different things that you can do with this just to analyze things. And creating a budget for the next year is very simple. It'll just copy your budget from this year and you can modify it. Hopefully your budget gets increased, but we know that's not always the case. Costs, we're making some additions to mobile to allow you to more readily see and add those sort of ad hoc costs while you're on mobile. So if you had to run out and get a part, you could capture that on mobile as well if you're a technician in the field. So this left-hand side, you'll see there's a new panel on the mobile work order app, and it'll allow you to see your costs. And when you add a new cost, you'll see the screen over on the right-hand side that lets you fill in the same sort of information we saw on the desktop app, where you can capture dates and budget codes and all that stuff, and even add attachments and upload files. Another thing in the works is real-time notification. We want to be able to push stuff in the app to you in real time. The place that we're starting at first is there's a new incoming work request that needs attention, essentially. We're also going to roll it out into things like we're going to roll it out to things like you've been assigned to work. So as your technicians get assignments, we'll see these notifications show up on their desktop or their mobile. Or if there's a deficiency that comes out of your EOC rounds, it'll show up as well. And the way this will work is on desktop, in the bottom right, it'll show up next to what's called your system tray. It'll say, hey, there's a new request, or hey, there's a new assignment. You can click through on that to get into the WorxHub. The key here is that you don't even need to be in the WorxHub at the time to see these. And because we're launching them through your system tray, we should be able to make your machine chime or ding. On mobile, we should be able to make it vibrate, stuff like that. That's the feature request typically comes in. I need a ding when certain things happen, or I need a vibrate on my phone when things happen. So we're hoping we'll be able to do that. So we should be able to do it on mobile. We're testing this out right now as well. This is an example of what my notification center looks like on my device, and I could see email notifications and then stuff coming out of the WorxHub. So these can appear on your notification center or the lock screen if you're showing notifications there as well. So that's the good news that this stuff is coming. There's some bad news, though, is that it's not supported in every browser. So items that are in red, we will not initially be able to support. So that means Safari on mobile will not support these, and Internet Explorer on your desktop will not support them. If you're on Android running Chrome, you should be fine. Desktop running Chrome, Firefox, or Edge, you should be fine. IE is just, I wouldn't hold my breath that this will ever be supported in IE. Safari, there's a hope. We'll have to wait. They're kind of behind the times as far as their mobile browser tech, but they should come into line shortly. So essentially this means if you're running Chrome on desktop or you're running Android, you'll be able to take advantage of these. Or if you're a small minority running Firefox or the Microsoft Edge browser. Space management is another one. We had we're sort of in beta flow right now with this. We had to pause a couple betas as we sorted through a technical issue, but we're sort of getting back at it now. What space management is, it'll allow you to visually explore your locations and drawings. So you can upload your drawings, link them to various rooms within your WorxHub database. You can browse through those floors through the WorxHub, see photos, get attachments, see what work orders and things are open, where your assets are. So on the same drawing, you'll be able to activate layers that say, show me my open work orders. You can activate layers that say, show me my assets. If I want to pull up an asset and I wanted to get a manual, for example, for that, you can do that through the space drawing interface. We can also roll everything up to campus maps. So you can introduce campus maps as a way to roll up your data. So I can see all the open work orders or assets in a particular building, drill into those, get manuals, see attachments, or even sort of navigate into the next drawing down. So if you're at a campus map and you click on your main hospital, you can then see all the drawings associated with that main hospital and drill into the certain floors and certain wings. So the campus map serves a couple of purposes. One, to navigate you around your various drawings, and the other to roll up data at sort of the highest level. Another thing that we're working on getting in place now is dealing with your life safety drawings. So besides the sort of basic floor plans that allow you to visualize where your work and assets are, you can upload your life safety drawings and make these available through the WorxHub to whoever needs them. So you can see all your different life safety elements inside the WorxHub. So seeing that this is hooked onto the WorxHub, the interface for Space, sort of the administrative aspects of Space, will look slightly different as we're sort of rolling out new interface designs. But as we integrate it back into the existing WorxHub dashboard, if, let's say, a technician is on the WorxHub in their dashboard, they'll see a map pin next to a work order, and they can drill into it to get this flyout that shows them the drawing. They can see other work orders that are nearby, they'll see other work orders that are nearby, they'll see other assets that are nearby. They can turn on these layers. Eventually they'll be able to load up the life safety plan as well to get access to that as well. But this is the idea that all of this data is being stored around about the physical locations and what they look like on a drawing. We can push that stuff and start to feed it back into the WorxHub on desktop and mobile. There's a few other things that are sort of imminent that we're working on. Routing updates. So we're adding more functionality to allow you to route by work order subcategory, allow you to, from the requester page, to automatically bypass sort of the pending request status where it needs to be approved and push that directly to a technician, and leverage things like round robin assignments where we can see who's available. We can look at schedules to see who's working this day, what their schedule is that day, route stuff to them, and then balance workload by routing stuff to the next person up and things like that. Compliance updates. We're going to be finessing a lot of the Joint Commission compliance stuff that we've got in there to better handle how we tag stuff as compliance, because there's different levels of importance with different things. So we're going to implement some rules around that. Start to address compliance requirements when it comes to environment of care rounds. So all the different inspection points that you'll do on an EOC round, we'll be able to link those inspection questions to a Joint Commission element of performance, and then start to track outcomes from those rounds. Sorry, I just got messages from my team that I wasn't clicking the buttons to update these bullets. So yeah, routing updates, compliant updates. Biomed is something else we're working on. So this is a separate area of the system where you'll be able to manage your clinical engineering equipment and some of the nuances that go with that. Integrating with alerts tracker from ECRI to give you recalls on your medical equipment. So we're still in R&D and early development phases of that, but we're hoping to launch that in the next few months. Another thing I wanted to mention, not everyone is using this, but it's an important aspect to what we do, and that's single sign-on. These identity providers on the left are ones that we can integrate with. Most commonly is Microsoft Active Directory or ADFS. And this really allows you, what this means is once you log into your computer through your corporate login, that's the login that gets used for the WorxHub. So in a lot of cases, it bypasses WorxHub login altogether. There's like a handshake that happens between our systems, and we adopt your authentication and move you into the WorxHub. In some cases, you might get prompted with your corporate login. You just enter that, and then you're into the WorxHub. So it reduces a lot of password fatigue as far as having to remember different passwords for different systems, and it puts your IT department in control of all of your password rules. You're not subject to how the WorxHub does things. If IT wants all these really painful things that as users we deal with, such as complex passwords, password histories, passwords that expire, all that stuff can be handled through single sign-on through your own corporate identity provider.
And perhaps the most important thing with this from a kind of manager perspective, you don't have to set up all your work requesters anymore. That's basically just automated through the addition of this piece. They'll just end up as users who can log in and put in the requests without you having to actually add them. Huge time saver there.
Yeah, that's a great point. Often in our implementations, as customers were getting going, we would ask you for an Excel list of all of your users, including requesters, so we could import them so everyone had access to the WorxHub when we sort of flipped the switch and went live with it. Now you don't have to worry about those requesters. You can set it up as a rule such that if someone is authenticated on your corporate network and they hit the TheWorxHub, that by default they go in as a requester, so they can get in without any friction, submit the request, and get out. So you're automatically creating users for you. If someone logs in and they're not a requester, you can promote them to a technician or a manager, whatever you want to do. But it's a huge time saver. So we've talked about a lot of feature function updates. As we mentioned, a few add-on apps. Zach's going to launch a poll here just to get a feel for if anyone's interested in a follow-up on those apps. So you'll see a poll launch on your screen. Just click on any of one or many of the checkboxes, and we can send you more information about these add-on apps, whether it's inventory or space or things like that. This will just help us follow up with you.
And while you're filling that out, the slide in the background there is about Dude University. This is our annual, let's call it user conference, May 5th to May 8th in Raleigh this year. We do this every year. It's a fantastic event to come and meet fellow users of the software, people in similar roles and positions, as well as branch out into meeting facilities directors from other areas. We host people from manufacturing, schools, local government, senior living, all these different areas, and bring them all together for joint sessions about facilities management in general, but then have specific tracks for users of the TheWorxHub that allow you to work with your peers and really fully understand the software, how to get the most out of it, get tips and tricks from others who might be using the same type of thing or we're facing the same type of challenges. So it's a really great event to just learn more about what we're doing, what others are doing that are similar to you. It's the only event that I've seen that's really focused on that facilities side and pulling together that much information. We still have some spots available for this year. Of course, it is something we do every year, though. So if it's not in the budget for this year, make sure to plan for next year.
Great. So I think, thanks for that, Josh. It is a great event. It's not only is it educational, it's also fun. There's a lot of good events and things that happen. Great food, great times. Let's jump into questions. We've left some time at the end to dig into some of these questions. Maybe we can get started on that part.
Yeah. So again, if you do have any questions, we've had a couple come in through the chat directly to us. We've had some come in on the Q&A button, but do go and click the Q&A button down at the bottom of your screen there in the middle and enter your questions there. As we're waiting for you to come up with them, we've got a couple that have already come in. So Kyle, first one here is actually one that came in through the chat. Can you talk to us about where you're at in looking at actually having a mobile app that can be installed on the phone versus the mobile website that we use now?
So for those of you who might not know, in the TheWorxHub, there is a mobile app that you can access just by adding /mobile to the end. Let me get there. So whatever your TheWorxHub URL is, if you do /mobile, this is a website that a third of our users use every day to access the TheWorxHub on mobile. It's more of a streamlined approach designed initially for technicians to get just the stuff that they needed to do on here. So you can take your data offline. You can bring it back online once you're back on a good Wi-Fi connection. You can upload attachments. You can scan barcodes. You can do a lot of stuff in here. As far as getting an app that you can install from the App Store, Google Play Store on your device, we're starting that build out this year. If things go amazingly well, maybe we'll have a beta of something by end of year, but I would expect more like early 2020 to have that app. We want the app for a number of reasons. One is it'll simplify well, it's probably not going to simplify stuff on the development side, but for you as a user, it'll simplify stuff when it comes to offline. It'll allow us to have better access to device stuff as far as location and Bluetooth and some of those other device controls that we might need in the future. It'll make it easier for things like attachments and viewing files, and of course space management and the functionality around that will be a lot easier, storing and downloading those larger files on a mobile device. So it's going to be coming soon. /mobile has a ton of functionality as well, and for the most part it behaves like an app. It's just running in your browser. Okay, so it's native mobile app, which is what it's called, where you install it, coming soon, but not next week or anything like that. It'll be towards the end of the year, early next year.
Yeah, we've got some pretty ambitious plans around the things that Kyle was already talking about relative to space, biomed, some of the compliance updates. We really want to focus on, because we found in most cases this mobile interface through the website works really, really well for folks. Kyle, we had another question about our ability to import an existing asset list or worksheet.
Right. So the short answer is no. The long answer is yes, of course. Send it to us and we'll import it for you. So we have tools that we use internally to do that stuff for you, just because there's a lot of validation and cross-checks that need to happen on that spreadsheet, and we didn't want to put it in front of users that had to deal with data that was incorrectly classified or things like that. But it is something that we're aware of that a lot of people are looking for, especially in the tune of, I want to export my existing assets. I want to make some modifications in Excel where it's quick and easy. Then I want to upload that stuff and have those updates flow through. So these are things that we're considering. It's not in there now, but you're not the first to ask that. So it is something that we're considering, is how can we make tools more easily for people to batch upload stuff and not have to send it to us and wait for us to work it through our process. So hopefully you'll see some activity on that in the future. Right now, it's sort of send it to your rep and they can upload it.
Yeah, and for us, that asset piece, because it's so important that we have an accurate list in the system that's properly connected to the categories and subcategories of work that then flow through to the compliance side, as well as connecting to the right locations, all of those types of things. We've not really found much success just blindly looking at information and importing it. We've really found that we need to do that vetting process. So we've built some really great processes internally to take your data and assess where it's at and give you feedback on the quality of it and where it fits. And that, we find, jumpstarts your true objective of having a complete and accurate asset list within the system. So Kyle, we had one other question come in on the chat side, and this was about kind of real-time location identification of assets and whether that's something you're looking on. So I think it's basically, you know, knowing, hey, where is this piece of equipment that might move around my building? Are we doing any work around that?
That is, as of this moment, we are not. However, it is on our roadmap for in the future, and it's sort of driven. It'll apply to anyone who uses the TheWorxHub, but it's being driven by our R&D around biomed. And in that side of the business, the clinical engineering side, there's a ton of assets that are very costly, very mobile. People tend to sort of hoard them and move them around and store them in weird places. So we need to be able to find those things because they cost a bunch. You don't want to have to go and rent one or lease one or rebuy or anything like that. So we're intending to leverage some sort of third-party hardware that you may already have in your facilities for tracking location of sometimes people, sometimes staff. Sometimes you've got it for other types of equipment. We can hopefully leverage some of those third-party providers and integrate it back with our space management app so you can start to see those pins on the map where they are currently. And then we believe that if we're able to build out the native mobile app and give, because that app will have device or access to more tools on the device that should be able to help you get to that location using your phone. So basically using your phone as a wayfinder to find where that piece of device is, because that device will have a beacon on it or something like that. So there's a lot of different ways that we can do this. It is something that's out there for us. It's something we're super excited about. It's being driven by biomed, but it'll apply to anyone in facilities who's got something they need to find. So the good thing is a lot of the technology that allows you to find stuff is getting cheaper and cheaper. So it's actually affordable to figure out, here's the top 10 things I want to track, and get them tagged and get them reporting their location, and then we can find them anytime we want. So that's a great question. In the future, we're jazzed about it. It's not there yet, but we're working our way there.
All right, well, I think we have one more, just came in the nick of time. One last question here. Any plans to add tools to manage interim life safety measures, PCRAs or ICRAs, or above ceiling permit processes?
Yes, so there are plans. So ILSMs, PICRAs, ICRAs, all that stuff, we're hoping to build out a permitting aspect of the system where you can track and manage all those different initiatives around permits. So as we get closer to that, we're sort of in the early stages of just sort of building a bullet list of what the features are that we'll need in that. But as we get closer and we're ready to sort of dig into scoping out what the development is, we'll start to engage with customers out there to see who wants to volunteer information, how they manage those processes. We've got a lot of good ideas using some of the feedback we've gotten from customers up to date, but the more input we can get before we get too far in it. So it is in the plan. I can't give you a date, but it's something we're going to be looking at very deeply in the coming months. That's a good question.
All right. Well, I think that does finish up all the questions that we had.
Okay, awesome.
So thank you so much, Kyle.
Yeah, thanks, Josh, for joining. Thanks, everyone, for joining. And watch your inbox in the next couple of days as we're going to get this recording circulated around. You can share with your colleagues and whatnot, and we'll post it online, and so you can watch it over and over. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everybody. Have a good one.